Understanding how to play chords on the ukulele can be one of the most rewarding things that we can achieve. So in this video, I thought I would share with you a bunch of steps that you can follow to learn how to play ukulele chords like the pros. So how do we play chords like a pro? Well, the cool thing is that it doesn't matter how good you are right now. The beginning is the same for everyone, which brings us to step one. We all start with the same chords. So even when I started, I probably learned the very first major chord, a C major, maybe a minor chord, an E minor, an F major, and a G major. And we have the most popular chord progression. Now you can play a lot of songs with this chord progression, but this step becomes boring quite quickly. And so we move on to step number 2 quite easily, which is understand dynamics and tone. We quickly realize that there is a sweet spot around the sound hole where everything sounds nice. For example, if I play the C major chord and I strum the strings around the sound hole, I have a nice and mellow tone, which is completely different than strumming next to the bridge. So we start strumming the chord progression with a better tone. But then we also realize that when we strum, we don't necessarily have to strike all the strings all the time. For example, we can select some of the strings like this. So with step 1 and 2, we are already playing a beautiful chord progression with a lovely tone and dynamics. So you've been playing these lovely chords and these beautiful songs for a while. You're quite confident. You think you know it all until you see someone else playing the ukulele with a technique that you've never seen before, which brings us to step number 3, the simple percussive technique. It sounds like this. With this technique, you can literally add so much more rhythm to the chord progressions that you already know. It's very simple. It's a strumming percussive technique. You strum the chord a couple of times, and then you strum the chord again, but this time you mute the strings with the right hand palm. So it's a pretty interesting approach. So as you strum, you mute the strings at the same time. So when you combine that with the strumming, and of course it works with any chord progression. It could be a minor chord progression. Sometimes you can also discover things by mistake. Let's say that you've been playing for a couple of hours now, your fingers are tired. So you're playing a G major chord, but you don't quite get the right chord shape. And so you end up missing the first string. So you think, wait a minute, I just made a mistake, but this is the most beautiful chord I've ever played. So you quickly realize that you can change a chord shape. You can add or remove a finger to kind of come up with a different color. Which brings us to step 4, change the chord shape. Now, of course, guys, you don't have to know the music theory behind these chords. This is mainly a mechanical thing that you do with your fingers that will change the color of each one of these chords. For example, this is a lovely G sus2. So we can change almost any open chords that we know. Now, of course, guys, we can decide to change this note slowly, like this, but also quickly with a technique called the hammer-on. So we hammer this note very quickly. And of course, it works with any chord progression. Of course, guys, playing all these variations is so inspiring. This is when we realize that we want to know more about chords, where chords come from, and how to build beautiful sounding chords, and not just, by mistake. We really want to understand what's going on, which brings us to step 5, learn music theory. Now, this is, a little bit challenging since the information is out there, but it's challenging to put music theory into practice. The most important thing is that we understand the notes that make up the chord, so that if we learn that the G is made up of the 3 notes G, B, and D, then we can move these 3 notes in a different position. Nice sounding chord. Of course, we have to move further up the neck, which is, a little scary at first, right? We've been in first position, playing the first 3 frets for so long that, it feels like home, right? So the idea of moving in a different position can be scary, but it's a beautiful thing to do. Of course, we can do the same thing with other chords. Now, it goes without saying that all these chord shapes can be quite challenging, so there is always a way to make things easier. And this is when we can talk about step 6 actually, which is learn the fingerstyle technique. Now, with the fingerstyle technique, we can pluck the strings with the right hand fingers. It's a beautiful approach that allows you to select which string you want to play. So, for example, you don't necessarily have to put down the full chord when you want to play one, because with the strumming, you brush all the strings. So, of course, you need the full thing. But with the fingerstyle, you could be plucking just 2 strings, the 4th and the 1st. So you go from this to this. Now, that's pretty cool, because if I have 2 chords, then I can literally go from playing these 2 big chord shapes to something like this. And so if you add some rhythm, it's just so cool. Now, you do that with the other chords as well. E minor. So instead of playing the whole thing, I'm just playing the 3rd and the 1st string. The C major. And the D add 11. Like, you see how we went from, playing these 2 chords, massive chord shapes, into something so tiny, yet just beautiful, musical, and rhythmic. Now, of course, this takes us to step number 7, which is break the chord, meaning stop thinking of a chord as, a one single shape. It doesn't really work like that anymore now, because with fingerstyle technique, we have access to, a lot of different simple chord shapes if you want. Now, of course, if you add all the variations that we already learned, then we have really like countless possibilities, because we can break the chord and use all these variations. And of course, last but not least, guys, step 8, add a melody, which is very similar to what I was playing right now. Of course, now I was thinking, about the chord and playing all these single notes around the chord. But when you think about a melody, it's something slightly different, because it means that you can really, break out of the chord shape and really just play whatever you feel like playing. Of course, if you're in the key of G major, you want to start by using the G major scale to, add the melody. And of course, there are a lot of different options here. These are the 8 steps that you should follow if you want to become a pro at playing chords. Of course, these are my steps. Please let me know what you think, if you agree with me, if I missed something. Of course, guys, it's 8 steps in a 10 minutes video. It might take months or years to cover these 7 steps. So really just keep practicing, enjoy the process, and don't give up. Let me know if you liked the video, and I'll talk to you soon.